Are you seeking guidance on your spiritual journey? Need help with a vexing problem? Missing a loved one and looking for answers? Look no further than Psychic Insights, a small trusted psychic service offering mediums, psychics, and spiritual coaching. This service is managed by Hollis Taylor, a gifted psychic medium, astrologer, and a compassionate coach. We are dedicated to helping you navigate your spiritual awakening. At Psychic Insights, we provide medium readings and psychic insight to help you plan for tomorrow and make choices for today. Find the support you need, compassionate grief coaching, and astrological insights to help you spiritually grow and transform. Our professional services include well-managed schedules, recorded sessions, and reliable psychic mediums ready to facilitate your transformational experience. Discover more at psychicinsights.life.
Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome. Well, I'm Hollis Taylor. Hi, Sheila. I'm glad you're here, Sheila. Welcome. Good morning to some of us. Maybe if you live in the US, probably. Well, I guess it's afternoon on the East Coast in the United States. I'm glad everyone's tuning in. I'm just going to give it a few minutes. Hi, Nikki. So I don't have to repeat myself the same thing over and over again. Today I plan to talk about death astrology. Yeah, I know it's noon in New Orleans. Yep. United States. I think that some people get real confused with the time zone, but I don't know. Maybe it's just I traveled in a van for 5 years. So I'm pretty good at figuring out what time it is as long as we're in the United States. But if you start doing Australia, I start to get turned upside down and I have to get Google to help me. But I've been to New Orleans. Do you live downtown, Sheila? Or do you live like on the outskirts? Glad it's not underwater yet. Glad you're safe. And I, of course, live in Colorado, up in the mountains, way, way up in the mountains, at 9,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. It's actually quite beautiful up here. I've already been for a walk this morning and done my yoga and, I have morning routines that I do, which is actually a good sign of you live on the West Bank of New Orleans. Okay. And I've actually been there. Your brother's in Colorado. Well, Colorado is a beautiful place. And it's full of great people, for the most part. As long as you stay near Boulder and Denver. Don't get too far out in the sticks. I'm queer, so I'm always very aware of who I'm surrounded by because, some people would shoot me because I'm queer. Colorado is a pretty cool place. I live up in the mountains, not far from Boulder. Boulder is where I go grocery shopping, for instance. I also live near a little town called Nederland, so I'm literally up in the mountains. If you know anything about Boulder, there is like a mountain thing that kind of looks like God or whoever came along with an iron and went like that, right? And they call it the Flatirons. And and I kind of live on the other side of the Flatirons up in the mountains. Sheila says Colorado Springs. I've never been there though. I bet it's beautiful. It is beautiful. I really like it up here. And yes, weed is legal, although I don't really use it. I don't care if people do. I'd rather you smoke weed than get drunk, frankly. I'd rather hang out with a person that's stoned than a person that is drunk any day. So, so yes, I live beautifully up here in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. I think the best thing about the Rocky Mountains and Colorado is actually the people. In general, people up here are a little bit, at least in this area, are a little bit they're more open-minded. You're more likely to, meet a person that's that's like, yoga instructor or Reiki certified or something like that. So I think that's like the best part. And yes, if you go to Boulder, you'll probably meet lots of you know, Reiki practitioners and Reiki masters and stuff, and lots of psychics. And here at Pride, I can do tarot readings and people want them. Things like that, right? Okay, it's I know. I know that downtown New Orleans is kind of like that, but if you get on the outskirts of New Orleans, it's not like that. It was okay. It was a little too many mosquitoes for me and a little too much swamp. So I like trees, but I don't know, swamps, mosquitoes. And I'm not sure. I went to a festival there. I'm just not sure it's my style. So I really like the upper Northwest, Oregon and California, especially Northern California, places like that. Those are my favorite places to be, honestly. So other than Colorado, not really big on the East Coast. Maybe because I grew up there. So all right. So we're starting to get some folks diving in. Mama Cole said, I miss the mountains. It's flat as hell here in Florida. It is flat. But for me, it was more about the people. They seem so much more grounded and in tune. Yeah, Colorado is a I don't know. There's something about the people up here, and I'm very sensitive to that sort of thing. And I feel like I don't like to always be going against the grain. I have a Libra moon. So I do have, and it's usually in conflict with my Scorpio rising. So my Scorpio rising is perfectly fine to tell you where to go, and to call you on your crap and to point out what you did wrong. But my Libra moon at the same time is like, let's not cause distress. Okay. So I'm constantly avoiding conflict. So the two of them are constantly in conflict. Not that Scorpio is aggressive or combative or anything, but if you live in an area, like when I used to live in Pennsylvania, there were people that didn't like me because I was queer, because I look like a boy, because I did tarot cards, because I identify as a witch. And it was hard to live there. It was hard. Because my Scorpio would want to explain to them why it was perfectly fine for me to talk to dead people, and that Christianity had no right to tell me that I didn't have a right to my spiritual path. And my Libra moon was like, gosh, don't start a fight right here in the middle of the coffee shop. So, okay. So I constantly like have that conflict going on constantly. So it's easier for me to live in a place like Boulder where people are happy to use they them pronouns for me, and it's not a big deal. It's like, okay. Um Mama Cole says it's all quartz. Maybe that's why people are more open-minded, Mama Cole. Maybe that's why people are more open-minded. We do live on a quartz mountain. It's possible. Like you could just walk in my backyard and find some quartz right in, like anywhere. I could probably get a piece like this big pretty easily. And you know, I find that it's so welcome, Lisette. I'm glad you're here, Lisette. And Susie from Brisbane, Australia. Bucket list place. I'd like to go to Australia. Someday I'll get there. I just got one bucket list today this year. I took care of I want to go to England, and I'd like to probably see Stonehenge and maybe some other sacred places, and I didn't know what any of them were. And I had this dream when I was planning it, when I was, talking to my partner about it. And I didn't really know the names of places. It's very common for me. I don't always know like the names of famous people or the names of places. Like I failed history. It's also in my chart. It's because my Mercury is in the 12th house. And so I had this dream, and I kept hearing this word, Glastonbury. You need to go to Glastonbury. And I'm like, Glastonbury? What the hell is Glastonbury? So I said to my spouse in the morning, Glastonbury? What the hell is Glastonbury? And she's like, and I had this other place, Avebury. And she's like, oh, yeah, we need to go. And I was like, okay. And, we started watching some documentaries a little bit about what they are. And I still didn't really get like the history. I mean, a little bit. I'm not being on King Arthur, that dude. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know that he's kind of a myth and kind of real, and that's what I've learned because of this trip. But I had to kind of learn that. And I didn't spend a lot of time learning myths as a child. I was very neglected. No one read me a book. So I didn't have any of those things. But I did watch Merlin on Netflix like 3 times because I don't know, because I like Merlin, and I thought it was fun. Okay. And it's a fun show. If you like magic, mystery, and that kind of thing, I recommend it. And in there, there's the King Arthur story. Okay. And from what I understand, it's not the real story, or there's some sort of fade about the real story. And I don't know. I don't think it's completely correct, like most things are on TV. Anyway, it didn't have violence, and it was fun to watch. So, anyway, so I got to Glastonbury. I figured out why I was there as soon as we got there, and my spouse knew. She was like, the first place she took me to was the well. There's a sacred well there that people have been worshiping at. It's inside of a garden for like thousands of years, and I was like, whoa. And she somehow knew that I had to be there. And so I did. And I cried, and I prayed for my heart and my son's heart, because if you've been keeping up with the group or you know me for a little bit, you know that I was diagnosed with a heart condition in 2020, and I had to work really hard to get it treated correctly with the most appropriate science, because it's kind of a rare condition, and the science about it is new. And I finally had open heart surgery last September. So it's just a year now, just barely a year, a couple weeks out. And I tested positive in the genetic test, and so I recommended to my son and kept begging him to get tested. And he did finally get tested, and then he called me and told me that he was positive for it's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, HCM. And a week later, he collapsed at work, and this was in July. And so by the time I got to Glastonbury in the well in August, a month later, oh, it was pretty messy, especially in regards to this heart thing. Okay, so it was kind of like the first thing we did other than go to an event. We went to a festival first. Okay, we went to the Jurassic Coast, we went to the festival. It was all a beautiful trip. Then we went to Glastonbury, and we were in a camper van. And yeah, I drove in England. And then Glastonbury and the well, I really cried. I put the water on I have a huge scar on my chest from open heart surgery for the correction to this genetic condition. It's not fully corrected, but mostly. At least the part that was really struggling. But my son had collapsed a month prior, and that indicates that we could have the type of HCM that causes sudden death. Okay. And so it's kind of scary. Like, this is the condition that like athletes fall out on the field with and things like that. So this is kind of scary. And it's in my chart to have sudden death. It's in my son's chart to have sudden death. So I was like, whoo. But as when he did fall out, I knew that wasn't going to happen because I looked at the astrology. I knew he wasn't going to die. So anyway, I got the waters. I prayed for me and I prayed for him, and we walked around the town of Glastonbury. It was very cool. And it's a very neat little town if you ever get to go there. And I had a major healing where this guy put on, his name is Jerome Zoran. They call him the Shungite guy. And he must have put like, I don't know, 1,000 Shungite stones on my body, literally on my skin. And we went through a whole process of healing and finding my strength and why I'm here, which is, I'm here to bust my generational cycles from my mother and my father. My mother, who was abusive, I was a great mom. My son and I talk, and then my mom has generations of mother and daughter estrangement, and I healed my mother's line in that way. And then the heart condition comes from my father's side. My father lost his mother at just 12 years old, and then and then he died when I was 25. That's when I became a medium, or that's when I started doing readings for other people. Let's put it that way. And then he died of the same heart condition. And then I was diagnosed in 2020. I'm 49. I'll be 49 in 5 days. So so this heart condition is pretty hard, okay? But it's in my chart, and that's why I got the healing. And so I really felt healed, and after walking in Glastonbury, I really felt like I could walk a different step. I could step differently and had more confidence. Although I do see a electrophysiologist, which is the doctor that will assess if I need the same device that my son is getting implanted at the end of this week, which is a ICD that gets put under his arm, and it has a electric line that goes to the middle of his chest and will shock him if he tries to die. So I think it's pretty awesome. I'm glad that they have a way to treat this condition that causes sudden death. And so I'm grateful for it. So in that brings us to talking about death a little bit, right? And the funny thing about death is that when you're meant to die, when a person dies at the time, now it's very hard for me to predict death by looking at your astrology chart. Very hard for me to predict when you will die if you ask me to. Um, I can usually tell you how, but I can't always tell you when because sometimes, a lot of times, um, when we pass, Pluto is involved, and there's also things that mean major transformation, and they also mean death. Okay, so um, hi, Missy, in the group. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, Missy. Big love to you. Um, Brittany is in Georgia, moved here from Florida. Okay, hi, Brittany. And so welcome. I'm glad you guys are watching. So um so when a person dies, and usually from like a health problem, usually that shows up as destined. Now, in the astrology chart, there are usually like 3 or 4 or more points that point to us that say it was time for this person to die. Okay. And that's why I do astrology death readings for people, because it helps them understand the death of their loved one and why. Okay. And I can answer questions why. And I can address what they were feeling like. And when I combine it with mediumship, it can get particularly powerful and healing for the person, because I can see the person's personality. I can see their whole sort of where they started and where they ended up. Okay. Now, when people overdose or take drugs or kill themselves, um, that shows up a little bit differently in the chart, but I can often find it, but it is not destined. It's an opportunity for them to sort of jump through that window, um, but it's not destined. I've never seen I think only once, um, have I seen a chart of a person that was destined to take their own life. Sometimes you'll see the chance for taking their own life in their chart, or mental health problems that could lead to that, or an obsession with death. Um, Maggie asked, can you see when mental happens? I assume you mean the mental health. Yes, I can, and I can usually see the cause. And I'm gonna show you some charts today and talk about that a little bit. But first, I want to show you a destined chart, a person that died of what we would call natural causes. I chose to do Tony Bennett, even though we don't know his birth time. And so, yes, I can do it without birth time. I can do it without birth and death time. Most celebrities don't have their death time. I also have Prince, who overdosed on fentanyl. So those are 2 completely different types of death charts. And in my experience, I can see the mental health and I can see how they got to suicide. Okay, Maggie? But it is not destined. It's no one is ever destined to take their own life except for one guy, one time, who was schizophrenic. And maybe he was meant to do it because he had to show other people something. And he did have a lot of destiny points, and he did take his own life violently. Okay. But he was suffering in a hospital from schizophrenia. Okay. And he like broke out of the hospital, and it was a whole drama. Okay. So that's oh yes, Zena. So Zena in the group asked, can you get to know about sudden deaths? Absolutely. Um, Sudden doesn't have, it just means different planets are involved to bring sudden. Mars is sometimes sudden, but Uranus is usually very involved with accidents and sudden death. Those absolutely show up only because, as I said, I can't predict when I will die, but my chart does indicate that I will probably suddenly die. Okay. So, so, uh, you know, um, in astrology, we don't know exactly when because there could be some free choice, some free will choices. Like, for instance, I chose to get open heart surgery that will hopefully correct my heart and add 10 years to my life. Literally, that's what the doctor would tell you. And so that's what I did. Did I add 10 years to my life? Possibly. Yeah, possibly. Um, and because, we don't know though. I can't predict a person's death. But once they do pass, I can look at it and tell you if they were destined to die or if something went wrong, if some foul play was at play. Um, I can tell you if the doctor made a mistake. I can tell you all of those sorts of things. Okay. And if they committed suicide or took drugs, I can tell you about their mental health in relation to that. Okay. Because sometimes, hi, Alexandra from Romania. Um, because sometimes, um, you know, when people take their own life or their own drugs or something, you want to more deeply understand what happened. And that's exactly how astrology can serve in that instance. Okay. So I'm going to show you first. Let's see. Yep. I got Tony Bennett. All right. So I'm going to first show you um this is a special astrology software called Astro Gold. And you can see that Tony Bennett um is obviously, if you don't know who he is, he's a singer. I don't assume everybody knows these celebrities. He was a singer. He sung with Katie Lang. In case you and lots of other what's her name? Anyway, so you can see how he's a celebrity. He's got 5 planets in Leo, which would make him very popular, very good on stage. Mercury in Leo is going to make him a good singer. Sun in Leo, going to hold the confidence to be a singer, independent, very dedicated to it. You can see all these are right on top of it. Neptune, visionary, which really got engaged in his old age because he started collaborating with a lot of people. And that's very much that. Also has the moon in Gemini and the Venus in Cancer. So that would be kind of his love language to collaborate with people. So you can see there he was famous and he was meant to be famous. He has the North Node up here at the top of his chart, right next to Pluto. So his death is also going to be public. That's what that tells me right away. Probably his death will probably be public. And it will be in Cancer. And South Node, so this is his destiny, and this is his past lives. I'm not going to get too much into it, but he does have some yods and some finger of gods, which are these aspects here in the middle that point to his collaboration and his singing having something to do with past life. So he was actually here to rectify some karma, probably from a past life or something like that. Um, and he did have a grand trine, so some things happened very easily for him, particularly his work, right? Okay. So, and then I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on his personality. You guys know who he is, right? Okay. So then when he passed, so some of the points that we look at for death are the sun, because the sun represents our vitality. We look at the North Node, we look at Pluto, we look at the moon. So there's lots of different placements and different. It's also helpful that I have a medical astrology education, because then that will tell you a little bit about the health of the person. So he has a lot going on in Cancer, and he has moon in Gemini, and a lot going on in Cancer makes me, because he has Pluto in Cancer and the North Node in Cancer and Venus in Cancer. Plus, he has a sun in Leo. The sun in Leo is probably going to have something to do with the heart. Okay. So, but I'm pretty sure, is his sun afflicted? But his sun isn't really afflicted. So it means there's certain placements. So he probably won't just like die of a heart attack or something like that. He'll probably get old, maybe die of old age. Maybe his brain could possibly stop. And the reason I say that is um, because of the placements of everything in Leo. Okay. And he also has the moon in Gemini. And Gemini is very mental, and it's in the 8th house of death. And then he has the North Node. Now, if you take a look here, you can see that his death was destined. I can find numerous points in which show destiny. So he's got the North Node here, which is destiny directly on top of his Mars. Bam, he was destined to pass in that moment. Mars often has something to do with death. Also, the moon was also directly is conjunct with Vesta. And so that's, his death was very spiritual in a lot of ways, just because of the beauty that I don't know if you know much about before he died. But before Tony Bennett died, he kind of like started to forget things. So what's her name? They probably have some synastry. I should have included her chart. I can't remember her name right now. But she's kind of a little strange, but she's a singer. And they were they were working a lot together. Tony Bennett sang with Lady Gaga. Okay, so Lady Gaga, and so Lady Gaga is a woman, and so she would represent feminine as well. So I'm pretty sure his past life karma actually had something to do with her, and possibly his wife as well. And then you can see here, so there's now 2 points because it shows me that spiritually his soul was ready to move. And then we have 3 points with Pluto in the same sign as the sun, with the North Node as well there. So there's now 4 points. And plus Mercury in the same sign as the sun, because like I said, the sun often points to death. And then the moon on Ceres and the South Node on his rising. And so, sorry, that doesn't count. Sorry, because we don't know his time of birth. Sometimes I forget these things. I often forget that. I don't know why. And so also, it wasn't really sudden for him to die. Like, everybody kind of knew that was going to happen. Okay. And you can see that because Pluto was retrograde, Uranus was retrograde. There's no indication that would show me it was a surprise. Okay. And with Neptune on Uranus, that would and his Uranus is retrograde. With Neptune there, that makes me feel like we all seen it coming. We just weren't sure when. Okay. And so you can see there are a whole bunch of points that point to Tony Bennett's death. Okay. And that is thank you, Maggie, Lady Gaga. I should have brought up her chart. I don't know if I know her birthday. Let's look at her synastry. You want to see if I'm right? Lady Gaga's birthday. Let's see. Let's look for her astrology chart so we can know what time she was born. And so Here's it is, March 28th. Okay, I'm gonna add it in here real quick. So we'll see if we'll see. So okay, so Lady Gaga and March 28th, 1986 at 9:53, right? 9:53 a.m. in Manhattan. Oh, she was also born in the same place he was. Huh? Isn't that interesting? So she was born in the same place. Now she's still alive. So we'll just save her and we'll look at her synastry because this is also what I do in a reading. But of course, it would be you and your loved one. Okay. So then what I do is I put them together and that tells me a little story. And so it tells me Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga, bam, right? Okay. She had to learn some strategies. He brought feminine strategy to her. And look at that, his moon healing her Chiron. So this is her wound that she inherited, and somehow he healed it. Especially in Gemini, probably because I think she has a lot of childhood trauma. So he probably served as like a father figure for her. And then here's the North Node in Mars, her North Node on his Mars and his Chiron. So he would heal his soul and his past lives and his past life trauma by being with her, by staying committed to her, by doing what he did with her. So bam, there it is. There's now 2 points. And then we also have Saturn, father figure, Tony Bennett in her South Node. So this is from a past life with Pluto and the moon. So she was meant to be there during his end of life. And that right there tells us that story right there. Bam, bam, bam. She was meant to be with him in the end of his life because she would honor him even though he forgot who she was numerous times. And so bam, there's another thing. What would I say about them? I would say that they were some sort of twin flames or something like that. Just because the alignments don't show that they're soulmates, it shows that they're twin flames. So that's an example of what one of my mediumship with astrology. Now it would go longer and it would be an hour, and I spend a little bit of time connecting with your loved one as well. And that is so fascinating when I start looking at death charts and the synastry of you and that person. Even if I even did a chart, I've done a couple of charts with people that didn't know the person very well. Like maybe they like one person, she had dated him in high school and then she didn't find out that he died until like 10 years later or something. And then he kept coming up in her mind like another 10 years later. And she was trying to figure out why. And we figured it out. We looked at the chart and we figured out what his meaning was back then and the healing she did to end that relationship and what she was doing today and how that would move her forward in her life. Wham! It was amazing. And I find that the death astrology really does that, especially when you have a situation like that. And it really helps you understand their death. It really helps you understand why. Okay. Because a lot of times, now, Tony Bennett, he was like in his 90s or something. I think he was like 90 something years old. But you know, sometimes people die suddenly, they die in an accident, but all of those things are still destined, even children sometimes. Okay. And I have done some really sad situations. I've done children drowning, accidental drownings. I've done child that died on the playground. Okay. So, like, I've done all sorts of things, but they were destined. They were destined to happen that way. And a lot of times they have something to do with a past life. Okay. Um, yeah, Maggie, even if your relationship was hard with your mom, I can help you understand why. and I can help give it meaning and show you how to heal it, even if it was somewhere in the middle. Okay. I look at my mom and my relationship in astrology all the time, and I'm like, oh, goodness, no wonder. Because I'm the person that's meant to heal the generational line from my mother, okay? Because she was very abusive. So you have to like, and continues to be. Okay, she's still alive. But when you have a relationship with someone, the synastry, even if it's bad, will show you why it's bad. It will show you why it's good. It will show you what its meaning is. It will show you even how to keep it going or end it. Okay. And that is the power of death astrology. That is the power of astrology, period, because you don't need death astrology to see the synastry between you and your husband, for instance. But if your husband is passed and you're wondering why you're left behind and why are you still here, I have the answer for you. I can look at your chart and tell you why. So if we take a look here, now we're going to start talking about suicide. Now, remember, I mentioned that suicide is never destined. Okay. So we're going to take a look at Prince, because I know Prince we don't know that Prince committed suicide, but we do know that Prince overdosed on fentanyl. Okay. And if you're doing drugs, it's like playing Russian roulette. And as far as spirit's concerned, you took your own life. Okay. You, we all know drugs kill, right? Okay. So it's a passive suicide, but suicide still. Okay. And you can take a look here. You can see Prince. We do have his time of birth. I'm not surprised that he has Sun in the eighth house, because this is a very sexual house, as well as the house of death. It's about the house of taboo. So it's everything that's taboo, everything we don't want to talk about: sex, death, and taxes. Okay. And you can see his sun is there, and it's in Gemini. So, he had a strong sexuality, right? And he's a Scorpio rising, so that would also make him super sexy and super attractive. Um, and he has the North Node in Scorpio in the 12th house, along with Neptune. So this makes me wonder about his visions as a young person, but he does have see this dark blue thing here. We call that a mystic rectangle. And a mystic rectangle, look, remember how I said when Pluto's at the top of the sky, it will probably be a public death? Look at that. Princess Pluto is at the top of the sky on his MC. It will be a very public death. And it will probably be because of his career. It's in the 10th house. It's not in the 9th house. It's in the 10th house. Okay. But this area right here is very public. Okay. And then also, he has Mercury in Gemini in the 7th house. So, that's and he has his Mercury in a good place. So that's going to make it very strong. He's a very good singer. He's also kind of spiritual. Mhm. Especially when it came to relationship. He probably really wanted those deep sexual experiences. Okay. And his love language would be very much commitment and consistency on a day-to-day basis. And that would probably be hard for someone that lived the lifestyle that he did. He did have a yacht with Mars in the 4th house, Mars in Aries. So he was meant, but to pull that from Leo and to pull that from the North Node in Scorpio. The yacht is a finger of God. It's meant to be. It's something that will come together that you have no influence over. It will happen one way or another. And so he must have really challenged his parents, I'm just going to say. You can also see that he was very transformative. He does have Uranus with Ceres up here at the top of the sky. So spiritually for him, it would be really important to express his feminine side, because this is in the house of spirituality and it's in Leo, and he should do it publicly in order to feel fulfilled, in order to fulfill his path. Was he gay? Not necessarily. Was he trans? Not necessarily. He just needed to get in touch with both sides of him, okay? And maybe if he was born today, maybe he would be, but he wasn't, okay? Um maybe I should use they for them. Maybe Prince would have chose they pronouns, okay? If that was available to them at the time. Um but they definitely had some things about that. The moon is in Pisces, so that would make them very, very emotional person, very sensitive. And for a person that's born with a penis, that to be sensitive, they typically almost always have some sort of inner conflict because of that. Okay. Now, and different people react differently, and we can see how Prince reacted differently, and it's all in the chart. So I won't spend too much more time on their personality, but then we'll move over to their death. Now, I can see that the sun is on the south node, so that could be a marker, but it's only that I think they only have two markers for death. So I usually like to do three or more. I guess they do have three, but they're not the typical markers. Um, I do see here that Saturn had warned Prince before about the drugs. And Mars was there. So, so Saturn was coming back around. This was Prince's second Saturn returns. And during your Saturn returns, if you didn't listen to Saturn, Saturn's a teacher. If you don't listen to Saturn, then Saturn will also often influence, not influence. Bec- During your Saturn returns, you will experience the consequences of those bad choices. So if you know anything about famous people that have died when they are 27, that's your first Saturn returns. There's a famous painting called Forever 27, and that's when those people are forever 27 because they committed suicide through drugs or alcohol or overdosed or whatever you want to call it between the age of 20 at the age of 27-ish, okay? And that is because of the Saturn returns. So if a person is working up to that, they'll get lots of warnings of something they have to change. And usually it's the drugs, okay? And if they don't listen to it, then they will often die from it, okay? Especially if it's a life-threatening thing such as drugs, okay? So Prince had lots of warnings. Prince had a warning. And I can also see that Prince was feeling actually kind of empty about relationships and was trying to sort of insert relationships in their life, which might have been why they had a thing with drugs. Um, the moon in Pisces, sometimes, if you don't deal with those emotions, they can come through with drugs and alcohol. And you can see here that Chiron and the moon, I'm not sure that Prince dealt with their childhood trauma around emotions, especially from their mother or their father. And as a result, as Chiron visited it, you can see Chiron is the wounded healer, and it indicates childhood trauma. And you can see that they were born with it on their moon. And the moon often represents emotions and woman and mother. And you can also see here the transiting Chiron is close to their Mars, and Ceres is also just 2 degrees away from Mars, which would mean that Prince didn't deal with their childhood trauma and therefore tried to escape their lack of relationships through drugs. And as a result, it ended their life. Okay. So that's an example of a person that committed suicide. Now, I could spend a whole lot more time on it, and I could bring other people in it and talk about Prince's relationship with them. But okay, most of us don't know Prince that well, and it would be more difficult to do. But it's very intimate to do when you know the person pretty well, when it's your child or your spouse or your mom. Okay. And this is what happens. So suicide is never destined, but the window of opportunity is there. And sometimes they've had warning leading up to it. And so for certain, Prince had warning. I'm sure Saturn was knocking at their door saying, hey, if you don't quit this, it's going to kill you. And, it's sort of like going to the doctor and the doctor says, well, if you don't stop smoking, you're going to get, you're going to have cancer and you're going to die. And some people choose to stop and some people don't. So Tanya, please ask your question. Tanya on YouTube, please ask your question. Weed's not a drug in my mind, first of all, because weed is, first of all, I don't think, I'm pretty sure weed has never killed anyone. Just saying. I'm pretty sure. I think alcohol has probably killed more people than weed. I'm sure of it. And even nowadays where people can take like too much edibles and end up in the hospital, it doesn't kill them. I even know a little kid that little kid got into his father's stash and ate way too much cannabis. And it did land him in the hospital, but after like 24 hours, he was okay. And he's still alive to this day. So cannabis is a plant. It's an herb. It was put here by Mother Earth. And the fact that it's labeled a drug is a bunch of bullshit in my mind. Yeah, I just don't see weed as a drug. So when I say drugs, I'm not referring to weed. Come on, I live in Colorado. Who the hell sees weed as a drug anymore? I don't know. So when I say drugs, I mean real drugs like meth, like cocaine, like, yeah. Okay. And I can sometimes even guess, if the person struggled with drugs or alcohol their whole life, it will be in their chart. There was a little marking of it for Prince, but I'm not sure Prince really struggled with it their whole life. I mean, they have a Pisces moon, maybe. And it was in opposition to their Pluto when they were born. So that's kind of like either you're going to drink or die. And so sometimes people will move away from alcohol and into other things thinking that they're safer, but they're not. Thanks, Lisette. I'm glad that you think this is fascinating. I think it's fascinating too. It's completely changed my perspective on death. Because and life even. It's changed my perspective on everything. Astrology has changed my life. And I would say because what ends up happening is you start to realize, first of all, that everyone that's here, even the bad people, that they're here for a reason. And then you start to go, whoa, okay, wait a minute. And then you start to realize how things unfold. Like all the politics and stuff like that is all that we're experiencing right now in the United States. The United States is going through its Pluto returns. It happens every 240 years for a country. Obviously, a person doesn't go through it. And Pluto returns is where things have to fall apart in order to be rebuilt in a better way so that it can serve everyone, right? Is that happening in the United States? Has it been happening for the last 10, 15, 20 years? Yeah. Most people would agree, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. So, it's fascinating. And then when you start to apply it to death, you start to go, okay, so while I miss my father, I can see that it was his time to die. And I can see that this person, usually what happens with suicide is that the soul usually learns a valuable lesson, which is that taking your life, suicide, is not the answer. That you have to work through those troubles, but they don't learn it until they do it. It's sort of like a little kid doesn't learn that the stove is hot until they touch the hot stove, right? It's sort of like that. Um, Maggie, start with the Astrology 101 class. I'll be happy to teach you. I have an Astrology 101 class on my website that you can buy. It's in the digital shop. You download it. It has 5 classes that my spouse and I taught. And along with like cheat sheets and everything that will teach you all about astrology and help you practice. And it also comes with 2 coaching sessions with me. So I can sort of answer your questions and help you with anything that you might be lost on or that you didn't quite get in the class. Okay. And I offer coaching 101. Maggie, I think the reading might help you with your mom, though. It sounds like that would be really helpful for you because if your mom took her own life, then let's look at it and let's try to understand why. Because, the one thing that I've learned with Buddhism is that in understanding, when you understand, oh, Melissa Berger. Melissa Berry Berger said, I have to get back to work. I love you. If you all undecided about it, do it. Um, Stephanie says, there was a mistake made by a radiologist prior to my uncle's death. We always wonder if that mistake led to his death or was it meant to be? The chart will show me, Stephanie. This chart will absolutely show me. Yes, Melissa. Oh, Missy asked, does it work on a mother and child if they're both still alive? Yeah, it's called synastry. Hmm. And so anyway, with suicide, um, while it's not meant to be, we can still come to understanding. And in understanding, when you understand better, you can probably find peace. Because when you arrive at understanding, you arrive at peace. And that is wisdom that I've harvested from the Dalai Lama. And in my experience, that is very true. Okay. So when you come to understanding, you can come to peace. And sometimes, in order to really understand why your mom did that, might take some time looking at her astrology chart. Is it possible she was diagnosed with something like cancer? Just, just a gut feeling. Um. So anyway, um, I hope that I get to see you, and I love doing astrology. Let me just say, when I look at my schedule for the day and I see that I have an astrology reading scheduled, I'm like, oh, nice. Good. I love that. It's actually my favorite type of reading to do. I do mediumship and I'm pretty good at it. Um, and I do all sorts of different types of readings, but yeah, so okay. And I just love astrology the most. That's all. And I do a variety of different types of astrology. Okay. So I do synastry, which is 2 people that are alive. I can tell you about their relationship. I can look at two yeah, it doesn't matter what their relationship is. I can even look at 3 or 4 people at the same time. And I can also look, of course, at the death of somebody, and I can look at your astrology chart and help you get on point about what's important to you. Okay. So, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you've had a good experience with it. And Stacy, yeah, your son's okay. I promise. He's fine. Yep. I'm not sure what people think would happen to a person after they die. Does anybody know what you think might happen? If they've already passed, they can't die again. So, yeah, that's an interesting question. Isn't that weird how we feel that? I used to think that when they put my dad in the ground, I was like, "Is he freezing?" And then I'd laugh at myself and be like, "He can't feel anything," because it was like November, it was cold. No, Stacy, he's not alone. No. What about all your ancestors? What about all his ancestors? What about all the spirits over there? No, he's not alone. And he's walking around with you all the time anyway. You may not I think you're alone without him. I think that's really what's going on. Okay, Stacy? I think you're alone without him. And I think that's um I'm not sure it's a party, Patricia. It is mostly pretty peaceful for them because they mostly only experience love on the other side. And so for them, I'm not sure it's a party because a party implies that you get to drink and eat food and connect with people, and they don't really experience things like that. They're not human anymore. So they're just a spirit. So Stacy, I think it's you that is feeling lost, and that's okay. And that's to be expected. That's normal. Mhm. Um that's normal part of death and dying. It's always in the chart. It's always in the astrology chart. Shows me exactly what you're to deal with when a person dies and why. I usually look at the time of death and put it on your chart and then see what was supposed to be catalyst at that moment. And that can kind of help you realize, what am I supposed to learn from this death? It was destined, and a lot of times it is. Sometimes it's not. Usually suicide's not. Drug overdose is not. But everything else mostly is, including like accidents. Sometimes accidents are not, but most of the time they are destined. And what are you supposed to learn from this? What are you supposed to take from it? How are you supposed to transform this? All of those kinds of questions, including your relationship with that person, like were you soulmates or something? All of that'll be in the chart. So, Stacy, I'm sorry that you're hurting so much. I promise you that your son is just fine. Are you okay? Probably not. Your son is fine, but you probably aren't. And that's okay. But maybe just coming to terms with that, maybe just saying that out loud, you know, I am hurt. I'm broken because I've lost my son. I think that that's I think that's like the first step to healing it actually, is being able to say that. So, maybe Stacey, you've helped me realize that when people ask that question, that maybe they're actually just struggling with their own pain and don't know how to say their own pain out loud. Um, Maybe that's why. I'm not sure. Um, but nothing bad can happen to you on the other side. Just saying. The best thing that can happen to you on the other side is to be reborn. And spirits love it when they're going to be reborn. And they'll tell you when you get readings and stuff, they'll tell you. Sometimes kids, sometimes young people. I've seen kids get reborn faster usually. Sometimes adults take longer. And sometimes adults are fast, but most of the time they're not. But kids will be reborn faster. Sometimes suicides are reborn faster. Sometimes depends. Depends on a whole bunch of things that we can't really determine. But I can sometimes see it in the astrology chart. But yeah, so it's a fascinating, amazing, different way of looking at death. It can really help open your heart and really help you realize that while it might feel like you're a victim of death, a victim of this person dying, that's, yeah, it's kind of true. And it's meant to lead you to this or lead you to that, right? When my dad died when I was 25, I was like, "Oh, my dad died, and he's the only parent I love," and felt like I lost my only living parent that was worth knowing, and I did. Um, but, um, I also, um yes, that's right, Callan Lipinski, that they tell you in a reading if they're going to be reborn soon. That's right, they do. Um, but what I realized was that my dad's death was meant to bring me to mediumship, and that's exactly what it did. And I followed my call to mediumship, um, and I've been in it for over 20 years, and, um 24 years since my dad has died. And, before that, I did, like, exorcism, and I was a medium, but I didn't do, like, professional readings for people until I was 25. And, you know, that experience catalysted my Saturn returns and sent me on a whole different journey, and I started to become more spiritual and more aware, and I started to get in touch with my spirit guides and doing readings for others, and yeah, it's a whole process, and now I'm 49. Stephanie says if they're reborn, would that spirit no longer come through in a medium reading? No, that's actually not what happens. They leave an imprint of themselves on the other side, just their one, not their whole soul, just their one lifetime that you know, so that you're not feeling lost or like they're gone. But sometimes it will feel different, especially like for me, because I was really close to my dad, but now my dad is going to be reborn. So my dad's still there, but it's a different energy. Mhm. But he gave me lots of warning. He told me he was going to be reborn lots of times. So yeah, the spirit will still be there, but it will sort of change, I guess. It's the best way to say that. So yeah, it's fascinating, huh? So, all right, my friends, I'm going to head out. Look forward. I hope that you catch the free readings with Sarah Redcrow tonight at 7:30 Mountain Time. So you can adjust that. The event should be in the group or on this page. And I look forward to seeing you then. Okay. All right, everybody. Bye bye.
Are you seeking guidance on your spiritual journey? Need help with a vexing problem? Missing a loved one and looking for answers? Look no further than Psychic Insights, a small trusted psychic service offering mediums, psychics, and spiritual coaching. This service is managed by Hollis Taylor, a gifted psychic medium, astrologer, and a compassionate coach. We are dedicated to helping you navigate your spiritual awakening. At Psychic Insights, we provide medium readings and psychic insight to help you plan for tomorrow and make choices for today. Find the support you need, compassionate grief coaching, and astrological insights to help you spiritually grow and transform. Our professional services include well-managed schedules, recorded sessions, and reliable psychic mediums ready to facilitate your transformational experience. Discover more at psychicinsights.life.